October 14, 2024. This is session number 32 of Discovering the Essence of Nonviolent Communication with Jim and Jori Manske. And I'll turn it to you. Welcome.
Aloha.
Aloha. I'm delighted to see you all. So many of you I've even seen in person. Just so many, I lose track of who I've known in person. I've seen some of you so many times online here. So just thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of our community. Thank you for everything that you do to support yourself and the people around you. I'm very, very touched.
Thanks for being here. I love seeing you all, and I'm feeling pretty good today. I tend to care for my voice because it can stimulate a cough in me. So I'm learning to speak even less than I used to speak. I mean, Jori would probably disagree, but
not keeping track.
So we have some interesting guided processes for you today, and then we'll use breakout rooms at least twice, perhaps 3 times, depending on how the time goes. The glare is coming in a little bit off the table here, so it looks like it's a little funky here, but that's okay. It'll go away in a few minutes. As I mentioned, I'm kind of going through a health drama, and I had been scheduled for a hiatal hernia repair, which is a relatively minor repair. My tummy is leaking out above where the esophagus and the stomach come together, right about here. And so they were going to fix that on September 30th. And obviously it didn't happen yet. And so we're still waiting for these test results from Honolulu. And in the meantime, today I had a really interesting experience of doing a stress test. I don't know if any of you have ever done a stress test. I mean, other than waking up in the morning and living life through the day. But a stress test is where they hook you up with a whole bunch of electrodes, and then they put you on a treadmill, and they're checking, and then they use ultrasound to take a non-invasive view of your heart while they get your heart rate up. In my case, up to about 120 beats a minute. What a fascinating thing to be able to see my own heart beating, to see these valves opening and closing. It really connected to me to my body in a way that was remarkable. And of course, it'll be a month before I get results from those tests. So anyway, that's just the nature of the system here. So I've learned a lot about that skill we covered a few weeks ago, patience. Seems to be my big lesson. Is patience. Jori too. And so we are just learning to kind of go with the flow.
We have a saying, when we start to get really annoyed that things are not going as the way we would like, and it's like, would it help to keep being annoyed? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's start practicing with a kind of an opportunity for doing some journaling as our self-connection exercise today.
Why don't you move a little toward me so your face isn't quite
just coming off right off of here.
Okay.
So
maybe I can figure out.
Maybe I come over here a little bit.
Shade you a little bit.
Let's see. It's down
I
here.
can't do it.
Good. All right, so let me share the screen with you so that you can follow along and do your own writing. And after we do this process, then you'll go to small groups and talk about what your experience is. So today, the general class is on transcending roles. We'll talk more about that. But basically, a role is some kind of strategy to meet needs. Roles can include things like trainer. I'm playing the role of trainer right now. Marta's the placeholder, or the space holder, I mean. And you guys are playing the role of participant or student or whatever you want to call yourself. And so all these are different roles. All these different roles are strategies with the purpose of meeting needs. So let's explore a few of them. And so first, write down some labels. Some's kind of a vague number. So maybe between 3 and 5 labels that point to the roles you play in your life. Some of you are probably done with that. Some of you aren't. That's fine. So the next step would be to consider needs related to each role. What needs are you intending to meet when you play a particular role? So for example, when I'm in this role of trainer, I would say the needs that are most alive in me are contribution and learning, connection, flow, love. How about you?
The word that came up was care, and then you said love.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what needs are you intending to meet in each role that you're playing?
So you'll find each of these steps in the chat as we're going along.
If that's
So,
helpful.
yeah, that might be helpful.
Some people are on
Okay.
phones and they can't see the screen very well. So.
Yeah.
Again, you may or may not be done with that step, but if you are, you can move on to the next one, which is consider if there's a cost in terms of needs related to that role. And so this is just a way of stretching our consciousness to notice that no matter what strategy that we're utilizing in any given moment, there are other needs that are not being satisfied. So for example, there's a cost to me in terms of rest. I'm not resting right now. And that's the only one I'm really thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's some cost to you in the role that you have chosen to play with here. Those of you who have been studying with us for a while know that whenever we connect to a need, it gives us the opportunity to learn something about ourselves, to connect to life, and that we can deepen our experience by savoring those needs, by noticing how they really enhance, having needs enhances our experience. If you're ready for the third step, it's about connecting to observations. What observations cue you to play each role? And what I mean by that is, say, for example, you're at work and you're in a management position where you have maybe a few people that report to you at work, but then you're called into your boss's office. How do you know that you're about to change roles from manager to someone who's being supervised? What do you see or hear? Maybe smell, taste, or touch, but probably what do you see or hear that cue you, that let you know that you're changing roles?
Can you give us an example there?
Sure. Let's see. Well, the one I gave was that you're a manager. And so let me see if I can come up with another one. Let's say that you're a teacher. And so you're also a parent. And so when you walk into the school in the morning, you might see a completely different environment than you would when you're at home being a parent. And so this is a clue to your brain that you're changing roles, that you're moving from the role of parent, which is intimate and quite close, to maybe something that's a little bit more dispassionate, as a teacher with 30 children that you're taking care of. And so looking around, seeing the classroom, smelling the way classrooms smell, and seeing the faces of all the kids and the noise that they're making, those are all cues that help your brain to shift the roles. Does that help? That doesn't clarify, just let me know.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you,
Thank you
Jim.
for asking.
So the purpose of this question is just to give you practice in making observations, to see that when you are using your five senses, it's actually a support system for you to support yourself in what role you're playing, rather than using some sort of a belief system or a should system or some kind of what Marshall called Amtssprache, this kind of office speak or bureaucratic language that is full of shoulds and have tos. We're actually being led by our observations rather than our evaluations. Another way of looking at it is to look for evidence. How do you know when you're playing a particular role? So, for example, when I'm playing this role of NVC trainer, I'm looking at 50 people that are looking back at me. If I'm in the role of participant, I might see just the trainer on the screen. So that's another piece of evidence. So how do you know when you play that role? It's just another way of sharpening up the skill of making observations. So be quiet for about 1 more minute, and then Marta will open up small groups. Right before she puts you into small groups, I'll give you some instructions. Okay, we're going to go to small groups now. The idea in the small group is you'll probably be with 2 or 3 other people. Maybe there might be some pairs, but the idea is that you use this as an opportunity to connect. What was this exercise like for you? What did you learn? Would be one question that you might consider. Did you like it? Might be another one. So those are, you could do a couple of rounds, maybe a round where you just introduce yourself and say where you're from and how you're feeling. And then do a second round where you say what this exercise was like for you, if it was insightful, if it helped, or if it was just covering old ground for you, or whatever your experience is. There's no right or wrong answer to this. We'll do this for about 15 minutes.
And just to have timekeepers or just have enough energy to say, could I have a turn now if someone's going on longer than everybody else?
Yeah, it's a real chance to use your NVC skills.
Yeah.
To make to be practicing honesty when you're speaking, but also to keep in mind empathy, that there are other folks in your group that may also want to speak. So we'll see you back here.
And a timekeeper or something, if anybody wants a timekeeper, just put out for that and that would be helpful.
Yeah, we'll see you in 15 minutes. Oh, maybe not. I did. I went from being lazy giraffe, just kind of taking a little walk around while you guys did your hard work. And now I'm back to being the trainer. So what did you learn? What did you learn about this, about your roles that you're playing? Just raise your hand if you have something you'd like to share with the large group. Go ahead. I think that's Monica.
Yeah, it is. So I like this activity, Jim. I've never done this one with you yet, so yay for learning and new stuff. I realized on mine, I might choose to play the roles because the needs outweigh the cost. So that was interesting to me when I put it down to see that, yeah, I really want to meet those needs, and no matter the cost, I still choose this role. So that was interesting. Thank you for the enlightenment.
You're welcome. That makes a lot of sense. We choose the roles where the benefits outweigh the costs. Pooja?
I don't know how many of the people experience this, but this came up as part of the sharing in my group. That it's kind of like the roles seem to be dynamic. because as people's needs keep changing, their expectations keep changing, and then it's almost like I'm catching a ball every time. I'm like responding to whatever is the expectation and need that's thrown my way. And I'm like constantly adapting. So the word that came up for me was like confusion of like the changing roles, quote unquote,
Yeah.
and
It's
changing
a very
needs.
dynamic living process, isn't it? You never know which ball you're going to be catching. And so there's a constant process of adaptation as we shift roles. Thank you. Auntie?
Auntie.
Lower my hand. Yeah, what I learned is ultimately I only have one role, and that role is simply being. And I also, where I am in the present moment, is I really don't see any costs in life. I just see only benefits. And in terms of reading, like the signs of what's going on, that's just something that is not sort of how I am in the world. The authenticity of who I am is just, there's just something about, I guess, the age that I'm in that, you know, I'm really getting ready for death at the age that I'm at. And it's more about this interconnected knowing where I'm interconnected to all of life. And I just know where I need to be in certain times and certain places. And it's more about activity. I know how I should be engaging. I know what I should be saying. And then the experience of just being in the breakout room was just so refreshing, because especially with all of the chaos in the world right now and the drama, you think, oh my gosh, who are we as a species? This can't be who we are. And to just be with the integrity and the beauty of the souls and their stories and what was alive for them, it just restored my hope and faith in what I see for the potential of humanity, that we are these beautiful beings that have the capacity to evolve past what our present challenges are. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining
Yeah.
us in this bubble. This is why I keep doing these classes, because of the people I get to hang out with here. This is my solace in a way. We've been doing practice groups for 25 years now, and it's just like a touchstone to sanity, to how human beings really can be, rather than what's presented in the media and so forth. It's
Yeah.
very humanizing for me.
Very humanizing. I look forward every week to hanging out with souls together. It's really, thank you.
We got time for somebody else. Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
Well, I found this really surprising. I discovered, well, I put down roles like student and contemplative, and then I thought, well, what about some of these other roles that you do, like the worrier? Which, as I was writing it down, the worrier, and I thought, that's hopefully got the rhythm of warrior. I'm the worry warrior. And I thought, what are the needs that I'm meeting, and a place to seat my anxiety, and then and my unknowingness. Underneath the anxiety is this apprehension about the experience of not knowing. And I thought, wow, this is unknowing. Think of the other things you could feel, and what needs, the needs for discovery and awareness. So this is a very delicious, covered a lot of territory that I wasn't expecting to go on. So thank you. I really liked this this journey that
You're
you gave
welcome.
us.
This week we're covering rolls. Next week maybe it's biscuits. We'll find out. Anybody else want to share anything?
I don't see any hands up.
If you've been waiting.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where?
Yeah, this is Pallavi. And what was interesting is what you said in the end, that can we go into an observation mode while changing roles than evaluation? I've been really thinking about it. Perhaps that observation brings in some kind of presence and some kind of awareness of where I am and what I am. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awakening presence, the basic underlying skill for all these skills we've been working with. Anybody else?
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
there
ahead,
we
Jeremy.
go.
Yes, I noticed with some work on with the Enneagram, one of the roles that they put me in was the enthusiast. And as I was talking to Dawn on we were just going back and forth how we we put titles with the roles that we're assigning ourselves, and where maybe somebody who's overly positive, some people are overly negative, and so we found that even as we're judging and putting the name of our role, we find that we still put a judgment on it, and even if it's a nice judgment, you still judge yourself for being too nice or too helping. And I noticed that even talking, it was just interesting to see there's always a way to look at yourself in another way.
Mhm. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you for sharing.
Always a
that.
choice. Anybody else? Really enjoying hearing your voices.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's move on then. And we'll kind of revisit some of these themes that came up. You should see a slide now that says Transcending Roles. If you don't, let me know.
Mhm.
This is the skill that we've been working on and we'll work on for the rest of our time together today.
And a big piece of this is about roles we play rather than identity. And what it says here is aware that we are not the roles we play, having choice about what roles we adopt and how we respond to the roles others adopt.
Yeah, this relates to a key distinction that's not on the official NVC key distinction list, but it's this distinction between identity and a role that we play. And Auntie kind of pointed this out, that we are always just this observing awareness of the role that we play. We're not ever the role that we play.
No, we may identify ourselves as such, but we're much more than that.
And we might sometimes even get lost in the role we play, especially because of the language that we've been educated with, which is full of moral judgment and shoulds and so forth. Here's the pathway. We'll just be quiet while you kind of look at this a little bit. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Anybody have any questions about this pathway? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, and Jim, could you describe what you mean by react to roles? Like in the first and the second box, it uses that react to roles.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's this notion of denial of responsibility. And denial of responsibility is when we tell ourselves that we have to do something. So check out this quote here from Marshall. We deny responsibility for our actions when we attribute their cause to gender roles, social roles, or age roles. So denial of responsibility is one of these habits of language which makes us react. So somebody, like we might tell ourselves that we're the parent and we should be a good parent, or we're the boss and we should be an effective boss, or whatever the label is, and the evaluative judgment that we put in front of the label. And as long as there's that have to energy, it's a denial of responsibility. And that leads to the second quote here. If you want to break peace, deny responsibility for your actions. It's just the way it is. If we avoid choice, avoid responsibility for the choices that we're making, we're breaking peace. And that's what I mean by reactive, being reactive or reacting. Does that help, Jeff? Anything you want to say about that?
No, I'm grateful you said it. It occurred to me like responsibility being the ability to respond. And I like that you use choice in there. And I'm loving the idea of staying curious instead of judgmental, staying with the what can I do versus what do I have to do? What should I do?
Yeah, exactly. That's how we make peace rather than break peace, is by being accountable for our choice. Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this back up. See if any other questions or comments about the pathway.
Hey, Jim, I had a question. I raised my hand.
Go ahead.
Yeah, could you maybe repeat this again? I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Both the parts around being able to respond, responsibility and choice. If you could like explain it again a little slowly, that may be helpful for me.
Yeah, sure. So let's look at Marshall's quotes again. And thanks, Jori. So we deny responsibility for our actions when we attribute their cause to gender roles, social roles, or age roles. So for example, if I notice myself telling myself that I'm in the social role, it's unconscious for me that I'm suddenly the boss, or I'm suddenly the dominator. And so I find myself reactively ordering Jori around, for example, without really turning my tuning my awareness to that, making a request rather than a demand.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm clear that I'm making a request, and she says, I really don't want to do that right now, then I realize it's my preference, and I'm accountable for my choice. And I can see that I have other ways beyond this role, being stuck in a particular role, that I can get my needs met. I can adapt. So let's just say that I have the idea that Jori's the cook and I'm the cleaner dinner. This is a kind of a agreement we used to have a long time ago. And one morning she says, I don't want to cook today. Can I adapt to that? Or am I going to get stuck and mad and reactive? And because I think that, no, we have an agreement and you should. Yes. So if I if I start thinking in terms of shoulds or have tos, then I'm denying responsibility for my choicefulness. If I stick with my self-responsibility, I got lots of choices. I can make my own breakfast. I can go out to breakfast. I can fast. I can wait. I got lots of choices. Does that help?
Yes, that's very helpful. Could I ask a question if that's fine, or should I wait until later?
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's say you are not cooking your meals. And almost like waiting. And then Jori starts cooking anyway, because she doesn't see that anyone's going to cook. And then she starts cooking for her own self-responsibility. And then out of empathy offers you anyway.
Isn't that wonderful when that happens? Because this goes to that thing about how life is dynamic. You know, in the moment, it might be a no. No, I'm too tired. Or no, I need to go to the bathroom. Or no, I need 10 minutes to finish this project. And then some time goes by, and then she can self-responsibly choose to then cook without any resentment. That's the key. Is she giving a gift that she can afford to give? That's what we say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Without resentment. I guess that's the
That's the clue. That's the big clue.
Mhm.
That if we tell ourselves that we have to or we should, resentment is right around the corner.
Okay, could I ask a follow-up question to that?
Okay.
If Jori assumes self-responsibility, she cooks, and then she feels like it's kind of like wrong to eat alone and not have empathy for you, and
Well, that would be Jori. That would be Jori. So
Yeah, I could find guilt. We all have it.
and guilt is the direct result of denial of responsibility.
Mm.
It comes directly
Mhm.
out of should thinking or
Mhm.
have to thinking, and then failing to do what we should or think we have to do. We rebel instead of submit, and then we will you know, if we submit, we'll feel resentful. If we rebel, we'll feel angry. I don't like either of those two choices. I'd rather stick with flow and honesty and connection when I can. I'm not always able to do that, but that's certainly my aim. Does that make sense, Pooja?
yeah, one quick follow-up to that. What if Jori experiences disconnection energy if she doesn't offer you and feels guilt too?
What would you do?
I didn't quite get
So
the
let's just
question.
say that like you do feel guilt or shame or
How
something.
human, yes.
And then how might you use NVC to walk yourself back?
Oh, I actually talk to myself the way I would talk to a beloved. That's my strategy. Okay, Jory. You know, that kind of, it's okay. That didn't work very well. Yeah, in the same way I would give empathy to someone else.
So self-empathy, in other words. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Tanya?
I'm having a little bit of dis-ease with this. And part of it is, of course, the belief that we're all make choices all the time. And but those choices don't always come without cost. And just reading the sentence that Marshall was writing down, I thought that's really good for the people who are at the apex of patriarchy and white supremacy. But it's not that simple for the rest of the world, because there's the costs start mounting on your choices. And it starts, and it's also a lot of acquired self-deprecation, because that's all you hear is that you're not good enough. And that's what I'm talking about, the mounting costs. So I think there should be some acknowledgement in this that that's true, we don't live in the level playing field world.
Yeah, you really want some acknowledgement that because of our lived experience, that we might have more challenges in terms of living this ideal of total self-responsibility because of the systemic oppression we've suffered, because of maybe trauma that we've suffered, and things like that. They can all affect our ability to contact our choicefulness. Is that what you're saying?
I am. It takes a lot of work I think, for women in particular to realize they live under the tyranny of the quivering lower lip in their spouse, and to walk it back. And I really think that some of Pooja's questions that she was asking, I was almost thinking that they were along those kind of lines. That how do women get out from under this tyranny? It's nothing said. We just see the disappointment on our spouse's face, and we've been educated, deeply educated to our core, to put the smile back on. And it takes a lot of work to be independent. I mean, I really admire Jori, and I really appreciate her modeling the self-empathy that's necessary to take independence in our own hands.
Yeah, and I would say that would be the first step. What you just talked about would be the first step, would be awareness of being in a pattern, whatever the pattern is, whether it's a gender role, a social role, an age role, or you name it. There's lots of adjectives that you could put in front of the word role. And so just awareness of it is always the first step. And then to start walking ourselves home through either empathy. Now, if I'm a pretty lucky guy. I'm a white, relatively wealthy, a rich American. And so I've had a lot of advantages. And so it's definitely easier for me to walk myself back, but I might need a big support system, a women's support group, some other kind of support group that can provide me empathy to help me to walk myself back to self-responsibility and more choice. And actually, my aim would be not to be independent, but to be interdependent. So the third step would be to connect, to say to my spouse, hey, I notice I do this all the time, Jori. I think I'm being the white guy again. I'm just sitting here ordering you around. And she'll say something like, yeah, but I want you to make requests. And so, but we'll use it as an opportunity to connect. And so then we can use that to find a way that works for both of us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. I love hearing you taking some ownership for being the white guy.
Yeah. Well, I've got almost 69 years of experience,
He's very talented at that now.
Yes, I have a lot of unconscious competence in telling people what to do. And yet I see it's a role because I'm also a small guy. I haven't met most of you in person. I'm only 5'4". And so being a small guy, that's a role. I walk into a room with most men, and I much more identify with my feminine side, almost always with men. So I think I also have a certain quality of empathy because of being little. I only weigh 116 pounds. I'm only 5'4". Now I'm getting a little bit frail in my old age and so forth. So you can hear all these labels coming in and how they're beginning to influence the roles that I play as well. Yeah. Does that feel complete for now?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tanya.
Isabel?
Hello, and thank you. Special thanks to Tanya for bringing that up. I was just thinking how this pathway is one that reveals how spiritual nonviolent communication is at the end of the day. That it's not that at the end of the walking into feelings, observation, feelings, and needs, we reach this space of touching the role and going, is that really me? What is the essence of it? And as an Asian who lives both worlds any moment, it's like a shift every moment because I'm in so much in touch with my global friends. And so at any moment, I'm either on the other side and then flipping back. As soon as I come home, I come back to my role. And role is a topic that I'm very fond of. But at the end of the day, so what can we do when we cannot change, when the cost is so high? It's not about revolutionizing immediately. I don't think that's the call. But as Jim has so eloquently shared, it's about awakening. And that has been my path, awakening to what can I do, if not throw everything out and say, just because I can speak English and make my own money, I'm going to divorce and get out of this rut. Hell with it. That would have been my choice. Yes, possibly. But I think another path has been to surrender, to live, noticing that I'm also very privileged in other ways, and to sit with it and to awaken to this aspect of nonviolence that I'm only beginning to understand how spiritual it is, and how at the end of the day, just as Jim has shared, I'm just reiterating what you guys are saying. I'm sorry for spacing out here, but what matters is I can't do this alone. I need a fortress, like you said, of groups that believe as I do. And so while my actions are minimal, I take no action, I look the same and act the same. What's changing is my inner landscape of understanding and having that breadth of, okay, this is my reality. Some are painful, some I am more dominant in. What am I going to use my dominant power on to make this world a little bit better place? How can I support? And when I am together with people like you, I can start dreaming of a day when the humanity will wake out of this role play and be able to just see each other. And I think we are creating that fortress here.
Nice.
Yeah, and thank you for being part of it.
Yeah, I
Thank
really
you.
like how you walked yourself back and answered your own question. You started with awareness that you were that we talk about, all of us here, we sometimes get stuck in a role that we play or a situation that we're in. And then if we become aware of it, and there's nothing we can do about it. Sometimes there is nothing we can do about it for a while. It seems like like just the way it is. And so we mourn. That's why I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, mourning came way before transcending roles. We really need to stretch that skill of being able to be with our own pain of unmet needs, because sometimes that situation will last a long time. Sometimes it never goes away, like the loss of a loved one, whether it's a human that we're really connected to, or a pet, or a situation in our life. So we just have this mourning that lives with us. Can we make space in our heart to be with that mourning? And when the answer is yes, then we can open up to the possibility of new choices. Yeah. Does that feel complete? Great.
Thank you.
Jeanette, then we got another practice coming.
In this week's weekly paper, there was a thing by Ashley Brilliant, which reminded me about NVC. It says words are a wonderful form of communication, but they will never replace kisses and punches. Meaning that we can pretend all of this, but to be vulnerable is a risk. So shame and grandiosity don't have control. I feel this whole thing about the self and political or social is about being honest with ourselves enough to stay grounded there first, and then everything else, because otherwise there's no end to needs, and if they're not met, whatever happens, and then that's when all the emotions take place.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the first need is that true self.
Self-connection, it begins with that sense of self-connection.
Yep.
Absolutely. Self-awareness.
We have a way of saying that. Put the oxygen mask on yourself
Mm.
before assisting others. That one lives deep inside of me.
Yeah, and I think kids really show that, you know, when they're happy, they're smiling, you know, babies, or, and when they're, you know, upset, they're like, "Eh," you know, and then we become this other role where I think there's a mask sometimes, at least. This is why NVC is such a vulnerable practice. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marta?
Jim, there is a question in the chat. Well, they sent to me. It says that, is there a cost for you in terms of the unmet needs related to be in your role as a trainer today?
I'd say the cost is, I already mentioned rest. So I'm not resting now. I'm working, so to speak, but it's also fun, and there's a lot of contribution. I can tell that being the trainer today is having a little bit of toll on my my well-being. It's a cost I'm willing to pay because I know it's not permanent. And so I'm living with the cost. It's just like if I go to the store and I buy, I don't know, something that I really want, it's a joyful cost that I use to exchange my money for that particular thing. But yes, I would say that there's definitely costs involved.
Yeah. And just to acknowledge that it's choice. And he's making a choice. We're making a choice.
Yeah, there are a few times recently when I chose not to come and got Eric to come, or Jaya, or somebody else. And so
we try and live in a world where it isn't have to's. And we have the privilege of that as well.
Great. Thank you all for your sharing. It's very, very enlivening conversation for me. So now let's give you a chance to practice again so that you can go back and talk with friends again. We're going to talk about structural power and the roles that we might be in a structural power, like trainer. Trainer is a structural power role. And you all have a situation in your life where you have structural power. And so think of a situation in life where you have some structural, it may not be the ultimate structural power. You still might have someone with structural power greater than yours.
But you have power.
That place where you're the boss, the leader, the parent, the teacher, and then write down and define what the role is.
And for those of you who haven't noticed, we put these into the chat there so you can see the next step that we're on now.
Then describe, do some more observing here. Who else is involved? And consider something that you want the other person to do. Some of you are probably done with these first two steps, so you might be ready for the third step. Now, remember, this is a situation where you have structural power, which means, you have more power than the other person. And those of you who were a week or two ago, we did sharing power, and we learned a lot about the distinction between power with and power over. So notice, what's your habit, or what are your options when the other person doesn't comply with what you want them to do? What will you do if the other person does not comply with your request? So then consider some self-empathy, talking to yourself in that way that Jori was pointing towards, like you're talking to your own beloved. What are the good reasons you want the other person to comply with your request? So let's say, for example, I'm thinking about a guy that comes here and does some work for us sometimes. And boy, I'd love it if he would actually come on the days that he says he's going to come, which rarely happens. And so that would really meet a need for me for reliability and clarity. And so that's why I would really like him to keep his agreements and stay in connection and communication. And I can have those needs alive in me without making him wrong for being the way that he is. That I can love him and hold his needs as precious as well, his need for autonomy and his own needs for choice.
Yeah, which is a gift that we can give ourselves, because holding our resentment is like taking poison and hoping it'll hurt the other person. So this is a gift we give ourselves.
So what are the good reasons you want the other person to comply with your requests? Another way of talking about needs here, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the needs you're hoping to meet by the other person's compliance? And savor these needs as you discover them. And also notice that if you're if you're enforced compliance with punishment or withholding, what needs of yours are not fed? If there are relational costs to enforcing compliance, threats, so forth. So this is mourning. Both of these two steps are about mourning sometimes, about being present with your own pain, your own sadness, your own longing. And I know I'm going too fast for some of you, but I want to make sure you have time to go to small groups and talk about this. What could you propose that might contribute to more needs being satisfied with less cost?
Oh.
This, of course, is the request part, the part where you can contact some creativity. Now that you know what the needs are, needs you're hoping to meet, needs that are unmet, maybe even empathizing with the needs of the other person involved in the system. What might make life wonderful for you and for everybody involved? In about 1 minute, we'll go to small groups for 20 minutes. So there's abundant time to connect with one another, about 7 minutes each. So at 25 past the hour, Martha will push the magic button.
And again, have somebody who's tracking the amount of time, have an agreement within you to make sure everybody has a chance.
Or wholeheartedly let it go. And
If you don't care.
Yeah.
But I hear that more from people sometimes if they didn't get a chance to speak. So that's why I say it.
and then we'll see you all back here in about 20 minutes. Just notice how you feel right now. Notice what needs are alive in you as you make this transition. Stay aware of who you really are as giraffe, as presence, as awareness, keeping that distinct from any roles that you might be playing. Notice how many choices that you have. You could stay on the call, could leave, you could raise your hand now and share, which is what I would like you to do. So anybody like to share anything about, yeah, Monica, go ahead.
So first of all, Jim, and Jori, both of you, I appreciate you guys both being here because I know for you, especially Jim, it's challenging right now. And Jori, you're helping Jim a lot. So I know, yeah. So I really appreciate that you guys are both actually taking the time to be here with us and teach us this lesson. So thank you. I really like the part about responsibility and figuring out what is, as Jori always says, what is the need beneath that and the other need beneath that and the other need beneath that. So trying to figure out, what is that we're really trying to meet. And then that gives joy and happiness and freedom when we get there and decide, yeah, we're actually trying to meet a need. It's not a should, we're trying to meet that need. So thank you for the freedom and joy.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here and sharing.
Yeah.
Auntie?
Yeah, I wanted to take a moment first to thank the technology and to thank Zoom and to thank each and every spirit here that creates this space and to thank the facilitators. And what was a life for me was a moment of feeling a little bit like a freak in response to this question, because I came to the realization, like a part of my life work has been being present with seeing how the paradigm as I became an adult wasn't working. And hearing an important teaching from the Koji Indians that were saying to the younger brother, which is us in the West, that we're dreaming the wrong dream, and dedicating my life to cultivating a new dream. And when I thought about the one situation in which I have a leadership role, I realized that it has resulted in finding a very small handful of people, of practitioners, and we have co-created a space where this language, it's a different paradigm, doesn't exist. I would never ever dream of asking or thinking of somebody to comply. And there's this awareness that, we're not in control. There's a greater intelligence that's in control. And we gather because we have this like practice that we do. And I realize some of the language perhaps with these questions relate to an older paradigm that is or at least no longer pertinent or relevant to my path. and wanting to be the change and organize in a different way. And we have no leaders. We're all leaders. There's something greater and wiser than us is in control to help us realize this mutual goal. And we have guidelines that have been developed out of observing the paradigm that causes this sort of suffering. But then there's this awareness that, when I go to my art classes with this other paradigm, where there are people who have these other roles are trying to force me into being a certain sort of way. And it's provided this wonderful opportunity to grow by drawing boundaries and just going, no, I'm not going to play that game. And that's all I have to say. And it was really lovely to be in the same room with the same beautiful souls before, so that we could deepen. And I felt as a consequence that my whole being just widened, and I just felt like this so much freedom and no boundaries, this sense of infinite space. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being a pioneer in
Yeah.
shifting paradigms.
Yeah, I celebrate that liberation and that you model that for other people too. Thank you.
Pooja?
Oh, this exercise was really helpful. Thank you so much for this pretty much this group and the exercise. I feel like I learned something that finally becomes like a little redefining for me, that the word response able also means coming from self-connection, being able to come from the center and self-connection. And that was a part that I was almost missing, like a blind spot, because I am constantly trying to be responsive. I'm responsive, I'm responding, but response able is the able part, which brings in self-connection. And that became like, almost like I woke up to it today.
Wonderful. And thank you for the commercial for next week's class, which is called Awareness of Responsibility, Response-Ability. So we're going to build next week on what we did this week and just keep going a little bit deeper. And for me, it's the deepest of all the self skills, the final foundation for what all this has been preparing us for, which would be the final week, which we'll tell you about next week. Barbara?
Yes, I had trouble with this assignment until we got in the breakout room and I heard other people's shares.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest part to me was the last question. What could I propose that might contribute to more needs being satisfied with less cost?
Yeah.
That was really powerful because the way I used to work was my only focus was, how can I get my way? Not, my focus was not, how can together we both get a solution that works for everybody? And when it was just, when I thought it just had to be my way, then there was a lot of cost, a lot of emotional cost, because it was, all right, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get it done my way. And then, of course, that took a lot of energy and negativity. And it also took a lot of energy and, in my partner, out of my partner. And mostly, I don't have to live that way today. So I'm really grateful for the insights. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. And thank you for sharing a taste of your journey with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And bet it echoes for almost all of us here. Cecilia?
Yeah, I want to say I'm really loving these classes, the last one, this one, and I can't wait for the next one already. But for today, there's one question that I really, really want to appreciate, which is the one that points to what are the relational costs I notice, you know, sometimes we're looking, what are my needs? What are the other needs? But then there's the space in which, you know, all needs are shared, and the choices we make sometimes have an impact on that space versus me and you. But what does it mean in the future if we keep going this way? What does this mean for the dynamic of this relationship? Like, you know, and sometimes it can be a negotiation of the roles. Are we looking at maybe switching roles a little bit here? Especially like as, you know, kids becoming adults and grandparents and all that. So so I really want to appreciate that question that really expands for me the space of work that I've been practicing on.
Wonderful.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
I'm so glad to hear that it's working for you. We're so thrilled that you and everyone else joins us each week. And we plan on continuing next year, by the way. We've been talking to NVC Academy, and they'd like us to keep going. So we'll keep going.
Yeah, we like keeping going.
Yeah. And so just a housekeeping note. This class is always at 4 p.m. Hawaii time. And what that means to you is that if you are in the United States or Canada, and except for Arizona and a few other little places, your time zone might change starting the first Monday in November. So you just might want to note that on your calendar. For people that live in most of the world, like in India and China and so forth, they don't have daylight savings time, so nothing changes for you. So that's why we keep it always at 4 p.m. Hawaii time, because Hawaii doesn't change, just like most of Asia and Polynesia and so forth. So just make a note of that for yourself if it pertains to you, and we'll remind you next week and the week before, a week after as well. As I mentioned, we will go deeper next week with the final skill of this final self skill. And go ahead, Deborah. Nope, change your mind.
Sorry, I really didn't have a question. My apologies. I was trying to figure out my time zone. That's okay.
No worries. No worries. In just a moment, we'll end the call, and I'll get off and start the after party. And the after party is just a chance for you to keep going with hanging out with a few people if you'd like. Sometimes nobody shows up. Sometimes 4, 5, 6, 10 people show up, and you can stay as long as you like. It's a different Zoom line. Marta will put the link into the chat right now. And that's it for me. How are you? Anything you want to say to finish up?
I have so much appreciation for your being here. I love the questions. I love that we're just exploring together. So thank you.
Amen. All right. Thanks for being pioneers with us. And we'll see you guys next week. Aloha.
So great to see you, Jori. Nice to see you.
Okay.
Mahalo nui.
Aloha.
Have a good, healthy week.
Mahalo.